Hi, I'm State Treasurer Dennis Milligan.
And I'm Nate Coulter, Executive Director of the Central Arkansas Library System.
Thanks for joining us for our 4-week financial education series, a partnership between your State Treasurer's Office and the state's largest library system.
We've teamed up to bring you 4 presentations about financial education. We're honored to have some local experts join us to provide these sessions, which will cover a wide range of topics.
That's right, Nate. We'll start with understanding the basics, learning how to develop a budget, then move on to managing debt, saving for education, and saving money for your yearly taxes.
But it doesn't stop there. We'll also look at how making plans now can help you later with some of life's major changes, like marriage or divorce, dealing with an illness, or the sudden loss of a loved one, to caring for an elderly parent. There's a lot to consider.
There is. In the end, we hope these sessions inspire you to take control of your finances, no matter what your economic situation is.
And we hope these sessions and our presenters educate and encourage you to keep learning, no matter your age.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get started.
Let's go.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Fran Jansen, and I'm with the State Treasurer's Office. And along with Nate and the Treasurer, we welcome you to our session tonight. I'll be the moderator, and tonight's session is entitled Basics of Financial Planning, and it's being presented by Todd Sadowski and Katrina Robertson with StrongTower Wealth Management. Now, before I hand it over to them, just a few housekeeping things. First of all, everyone in the call will be muted, so you don't need to worry about those dogs barking in the background or the kids crying in the background. However, if you do have any questions as they're presenting, if you would please use your chat feature, and we will be monitoring the questions as they come in, and either at a break or at the conclusion of their presentation, we'll make sure that Katrina or Todd can answer them. Also, tonight's session is being recorded, so if it's something that you want to go back and watch later, or if there were a couple of nuggets out of it that you need a refresher on, you'll be able to do that. We will have the video uploaded to both the CAL's website as well as the State Treasurer's website. So with that, I am happy to turn it over to Todd and Katrina, who will take it from here.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, before we start, just wanted to kind of recognize that we are probably speaking to a diverse audience out there. There may be some of y'all that are just barely getting by and making ends meet, some that have possibly accumulated debt, not real sure how you're going to get out of it. Maybe you're doing okay, but you want to take your finances to that next level. Maybe there's somebody out there that has more money than they know what to do with. I haven't run into one of those yet myself, but we always find a use for it. But our hope is that as you leave today's class, that you'll develop a vision for where you want to be in the future and how to get there. But we wanted to kind of start the class with the question, why? In this case, why is financial planning important? Why is paying off debt important? Why is saving for the future important? So to kind of kick us off here, we've got a jar of rocks that I think Todd's going to explain.
I will do my best. Otherwise, it's not going to make a lot of sense, right? And hello to everybody. Welcome. We're in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So excited to be teaming up with the Treasury Department and the libraries, because financial literacy is something that we just are very passionate about. So we're just going to nerd out with you on what we enjoy doing here. But we do like to start with this question of why. Why is it important? Why should we be concerned about financial planning? What's it do for us? And the way I like to illustrate that often is with a story, and that is with this jar of rocks story. So some of you may have heard this before, but there was a professor one time who had a time management class. He had a glass jar he set on the table in front of him, and he began to fill the jar with these large rocks, kind of like what you see on the screen here. And the professor then asked his class, okay, is the jar full? And some people said, well, yeah, the jar is full. Well, then he took out some gravel, some small pieces of gravel, and he poured that in. And what happened is as he shook it, the gravel went into the small cracks between the large rocks, okay? Next, he brought out some sand and he poured that into the jar until finally that thing was packed so full you couldn't fit anything else into it. And so he asked his class, again, this was a time management class, and he said, what's the moral of this story? And one person raised his hand and he said, well, if you try real hard, you can cram everything into a day. He said, no, actually, that is not the moral of the story. He said, the moral of this story is if you don't put the big rocks in first, you're never going to be able to get them in at all. For example, if you fill the jar with sand first, you can't fit the large rocks in there. The parallel to that is the large rocks represent the things that are important to us, right? That might be your family, it might be your friends, your faith, the things that truly matter in life to you. And maybe the sand represents just day-to-day life, the stuff that, you get to the end of a day and you're like, man, everything was so busy and I don't even know what happened kind of stuff, right? And so the moral of that story is it takes intentionality for you to make sure you put the large rocks in first, that you take the time, you put time and invest time into things that truly matter. Because if you don't, you're going to get to the end of the day and realize it's too late. You can't go back. You filled your jar with sand, the everyday life stuff. So that's why we think financial planning is so important, is because the reality is you love people, you have loved ones, and you want to make sure those loved ones are provided for. And the way you do that is you plan ahead. And so that's what we're all about, is making sure that we plan for these things to provide for our family's needs.
Right, Todd. And there's that famous quote by Zig Ziglar: if you aim for nothing, you're going to hit it every time. So I think that is what you're trying to drive home, is that we need to make sure we've got a target and we know what that target is so that we can actually hit it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we don't have a target, if we don't have a goal, by default, I think what's going to happen is not success, by the way. I don't think we accidentally fall into success, by the way. We accidentally fall into struggle, right? And some statistics to kind of back that up. What we found is 35% of marriages actually cite finances as their number one stressor. And so you've probably heard the number one cause for divorce in America is finances. Well, finances is a hot button topic. So we want to make sure that there's a connectivity there between you and your spouse, your loved ones, instead of that friction, right? 80% of Americans, this one's staggering to me. Let me say it again. 80% of Americans that are aged 55 to 64. So if you're between the ages of 55 and 64, have nothing saved for retirement. Nothing, zero. All right, that's just staggering to me. If we want to retire one day, guess what? We need to be saving. And then, Katrina, would you share how much there is in credit card debt out there?
Well, what the surveys out there show is about 16,000. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually is higher, but what I see even more just in my personal practice. In fact, today I was doing annual reviews for clients and we go over their debts and their assets. And every single one that I did a review on today had auto loans of at least a minimum of 30,000. And that's a large payment that you're driving around. It can be overwhelming and weigh you down.
Yep. So those things will definitely cause stress in your life. So our hope is to let you not be in that demographic. In fact, since you're here, since you're participating in this, is a great sign, right? You want to be good with finances. You want to manage your wealth well. So kudos to you for taking the time to be here and participate. So we're going to give you 4 different keys, 4 different steps, 4 different things that you can take home with you. My hope is that you're going to leave change somehow. You're going to find something, no matter what your situation, no matter what your age, you're going to find something tangible that you can take to reach that next step, that next level. And the first thing that we're going to talk about, let me get it on the screen here, is that there's an order that makes sense to build your finances. So no matter where you're at, there's a process, and if you go in order, it's going to make a whole lot more sense, okay? Now, we call this the planning pyramid. So to build a pyramid, you start at the bottom level and you build your way up toward the top. And the first level, we say, is the foundation. That's your plan. What is important to you? How do you want to live in the future? Take some time to remember. We said we want to start with the question why. This is what I'm asking you guys to do in your own personal finances. Why do I want to build, and what am I building? Where am I going towards? Right? You've got to have some sort of plan in your mind, because that's going to affect every single other level that we go into in the conversation here. So that's the foundational level. All right, Katrina, do you want to share the next one?
Well, yeah, actually, the next one, Todd, is generosity. And, typically people completely leave this off of their plan. They kind of wait until the end of the month, see if they have any money left at the end of the month to give. And we all know what happens then. There's never any money left, right? We're not necessarily going to focus on generosity, but fortunately us in our practice, we have clients that are very, very generous, and we help them plan their giving. And we just find that those that work giving into their plan tend to be a lot more just content and happy people. So generosity would be that second level, is plan your giving.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Katrina. I was in with some friends the other day, and we were actually having the same conversation of generosity. And what we went around and discovered is I've never met a generous person that wasn't happy. 100%,
Correct.
every single one.
Correct.
So that's one reason as part of the plan. Now, after that, then you tend to focus on more what you would traditionally think, and risk management is the next level. Now, risk management, that covers things like making sure you have the right insurances in place. That might be health insurance, life insurance, obviously auto homeowners, maybe some kind of liability policy. And we're not going to focus on those things today. But as far as when you're getting started with your finances, that's normally the next thing that you're going to consider. It can also include legal documentation. So making sure you have an estate plan in place, making sure you've got living directives for, what's called a living will. In fact, I know the next speaker, the next session that they're going to have is going to focus on those kinds of things. So be sure to tune in for that. And then after the risk management part, Katrina's going to take over.
Is a debt reduction. So that's not necessarily the fun part of the plan, but the debt has to be paid off before we step into the saving and investing. It's just not going to make any sense whatsoever if you have debt, especially revolving credit card debt, high interest rate debt, where I've seen interest rates as high as 25, 28% on credit cards. It just does not make sense at all to continue to hold on to that debt and put money towards saving and investing. It's almost like putting water into a strainer. You're going to wind up backwards. So we have to have debt reduction in there before we jump into the saving and investing.
Which takes us to savings and investments. That's the last step here. And as Katrina said, it doesn't make sense to save and invest. In fact, we make a living helping people manage money to invest assets. And we've had many times where people come in, I've got some money, I want to start investing. Well, you really can't. It's not time yet. You've got to do that before you go to this next level. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And savings and investments can encompass making sure you have the right bank account set up for emergency funds, but then also maybe an investment account for saving for college or maybe saving for retirement. And we will touch on some investment principles a little bit later on. We're not going to go too heavy into it, but we will have some discussion on that. But the key is this is the order that makes sense. If you really want to get your finances on track, go from the bottom to the top in that order. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. If you get it flipped upside down, like Katrina said, if you have debt and it's charging you 20% interest and you're saving money over here that's earning, 8% or whatever, it doesn't make sense. You're just going backwards. So to spring forward, a lot of what's helpful is just to get it in the right order. Don't do it out of order, because otherwise you're just going to be frustrating yourself and it's going to set you back. So that said, we talked about how debt is so important. So Katrina, why don't you get us started off on the next step, which is to eliminate debt.
Correct. So, and I'm going to start again with that question of why. And we've already kind of touched on the why with the debt of why, but the other question would be, why do we even go into debt in the first place? And then why should we get it out of debt? We touched on that part of the why. What I think the reality is, oftentimes the why behind the debt is we're buying things we can't afford. That's just, there are some situations and circumstances that arise where that isn't the case, but the reality is most of the time it's because we're purchasing something we simply can't afford. But buying things with debt is significantly more expensive than just paying cash for it. If we had more time, we could crunch some numbers and run some illustrations that show you at certain interest rates over a particular term how much more you end up paying for an item. And a lot of times, by the time you pay it off, the item has lost its value anyway. So the more you can pay cash for things, the better. But oftentimes we buy things that we really don't need on debt because debt is so easy. And we can't, we make things that we end up buying things that we just can't afford, we don't need. And so it's just something we need to be really careful about. There's a funny little quote I've heard. What is that, Todd?
Yeah, so it's we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people that we don't even like. And
isn't that the truth?
Truth to that.
Keeping up with the Joneses, I think, is the cliche with that.
Yeah. And I like to tell people too that here's the thing. I think we need to understand, like you said, why is debt so bad today? Because the reality is there's patterns we can pick up on. If we can figure that out, then the rest will make a whole lot more sense. For years that I've been teaching on debt reduction and how debt got so bad, I've been telling people that debt is really bad today because of two main problems, and they are because of spiders and because of marshmallows, which I'm sure is perfectly clear, right? I don't need to explain any more than that. Actually, I will probably have to explain. So spiders, what am I talking about there? I will freely admit I hate spiders with a passion. Scared to death of them. I'm sure with an audience that we've got, some of you guys can relate to me. Others probably want to pull my man card for admitting that. But I hate them. I can't stand them. And so there's this thing you can do and that psychologists can do. And so, for example, let's say there was a spider right in front of me here. I'd be scooting back. Trust me, I wouldn't be near it. But psychology would say that little by little, inch by inch, day at a time, however long it takes, I could get closer and closer and closer to that spider. I could actually train myself one day that I could actually pick that thing up if I wanted to, which I will never do because I hate spiders. What that is referring to, the term is systematic desensitization. Okay, it's a mouthful, systematic desensitization. The idea is I can reduce my fear of that over time. And what I would say is that we have been systematically desensitized to the danger of debt. What I want everybody tuned in right now to know is that there is danger in debt. It is extremely dangerous. Look at what happened in the 2008 debt crisis when families just fell apart at the seams because everybody was leveraging debt so much. Debt is dangerous, all right? 30 years ago, people weren't in debt like they are today. They weren't using debt instruments like we are today. We have been systematically desensitized to the danger of debt. And a lot of people will try to lie and say, well, yeah, debt's a reality. We're all going to have it. No, it does not have to be that way. We work with people all the time that work debt-free. So we have been desensitized to the dangers of debt is the first thing I want you to consider. Now, the second thing is the marshmallows. And I'm going to say that's instant gratification. Years ago, this professor at Stanford University, Michael Mischel, he did a study, and it was famously called the Marshmallow Test. And I love what they did. It was so simple. They actually took 4-year-olds and they would set a 4-year-old down at a table and they put a plate in front of them with a single marshmallow on it. And they told this 4-year-old, okay, you can eat that marshmallow right now if you'd like. Or if you'd rather, you wait for it. All right, wait, I've got to go do some things. I'll be back in a little while. And if that marshmallow is still there when I get back, I'm going to give you a second marshmallow. So you'll have 2. Okay, so these are 4-year-olds. What do you think a lot of them did? Many of them snatched it up, ate it right away. Now, did the child know that it would be better to wait to get the second marshmallow? Yes, but they caved into this thing called instant gratification. That's the world we live in today. Guys, we know that using debt makes things more expensive. We know that it's not good for us, and we know it can cause stress in our lives, but yet we do it anyways because you can have anything you want today with low monthly payments, right? That's the temptation. So instead of instant gratification, we have to learn how to delay gratification. Now, this would be powerful alone already, but let me tell you what happened. This marshmallow test, they didn't stop here. They monitored these two sets of children, the one that waited and the ones that ate the marshmallow right away. And they followed them into adulthood. So this was a long study. And what they found is the ones that snatched up the marshmallow right away and ate it, they couldn't delay gratification. They needed it and was very different from the other population that waited and got the second marshmallow. The ones that took it right away, they had lower job satisfaction, lower incomes. They had trouble delaying their impulses. It caused marital problems. It caused more stress in their lives compared to the general population. Now, the ones, and these are 4-year-olds, the 4-year-olds that waited and got the second marshmallow as they grew into adulthood, very different story. They were able to delay gratification as they got older. They avoided debt. They had more job satisfaction. They had higher incomes, and they were just happier people in general than the rest of the population. So, guys, this is such a simple study, but we have to ask ourselves, who am I? Would I take the first marshmallow or would I wait and get the second marshmallow? But this is what's caused debt to be such a problem today is, again, one, we've been desensitized to the danger of debt. We don't see that it's a problem. We don't see that it could cause us harm. And then two, again, we want it now. We don't want to wait. And so I see this with a lot of young people, for example. So any of you young people tuning in now, here's the temptation you'll face. You'll get out of school, you get out of college, and you want what your parents have and you want it now, right? And you can do that sort of, right? Not without consequences. You can do that by using debt. And so my caution is don't go with that approach. Don't let that trap you because it'll definitely hold you back, right? So what do we do, Katrina, if we want to get out of debt?
Well, so we've already kind of touched on some of the why we want to get out of debt. But one of the main reasons is we really can't ever effectively save as long as we have debt hanging over us. Now, I do want to kind of interject in there. There is some debt that could be considered good debt. These are debts that you could almost put in the category of an investment, like a home mortgage, student loans. Now, that is not without a little caveat in saying, can you overextend yourself with a home mortgage and student loans? Absolutely, you can. But those debts are money it's an investment, and the interest rates tend to be lower, especially right now. Interest rates on mortgages are at all-time lows. So you could absolutely have a mortgage debt and still be saving. I know there's a couple questions that have come through. We're going to address those questions at the end. Somebody mentioned student loans. Those as well, the interest rates tend to be low. And you can divert to some of your funds to savings and investing if those are your only types of debt that you have. But you still don't want to overextend yourself there, because I have run into individuals that have they got a degree in education, which is a very admirable degree and a great career. But the reality is teachers don't make that much, and they've managed to strap themselves with 100,000 more of student debt. And that's just, they start their careers really almost behind the game. But another reason is the reality is if you have a monthly debt payment to make, it reduces how much money you have left at the end of the month to do really anything, not just saving and investing, but really anything. And it's just downright stressful to be in debt. My clients that have been able to make it to retirement and be debt free, you can just see the relaxed in their demeanor and their face, that they don't have that hanging over their heads, as opposed to the clients I meet with that are in their 60s and have refinanced, and retirement looks really bleak for them because they still have those debt payments to make. So there's some steps to get out of debt. Todd, what are a few of those steps to get out of debt?
Yep. And I'll also agree with you on everything you said there. I had a friend one time, he said, you know where the worst place to live is? I said, where? He said, just outside your income level. And the idea is, if you do that, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's not going to take much for one thing to happen and boom, it just blows up your whole plan. It's just not a good way to live. I mean, there's a lot of stress there, and we don't want stress. on top of things. And like we said earlier, the impact it has on our families. Family life is hard enough as it is. It's just challenging, right? We're all broken people bringing together into a family, and you add financial pressure on top of that, it makes it that much harder. So if you are in debt, right, it's not overly complicated. I bet you could come up with this exact same plan, but we're going to give you some ideas to go with this. But the step one is just to gather them up. So if you're struggling with debt today, if you have a lot of that, here's what I want you to do. Make a list, right? Write down every single person that you owe money to, every company, put down the balance you owe, how much the monthly payments are, what the interest rate is, what the month, and get that fully in order, and then get a total at the bottom. That's the part that hurts sometimes. If you're super nerdy like me, do a spreadsheet, right? Let it do the math for you. Spreadsheets are my love language. So first thing is you do want to gather all your debts together, and sometimes that's shocking, right? You don't realize how much you've got out there. Katrina, like you said, I too have had friends that they get out of college and they're already $150,000 in debt, add on to credit cards that they already used during college, and you talk about an uphill battle. And so I'm 45 years old, and I've got friends same age as me that are still paying off those student loans, and it's going to take them a long time. So they're facing a headwind all the way. So gather that up, get your list together. Once you've done that, here's what I want you to do. I want you to prioritize what order you're going to pay those off in. Okay. Now, here's the temptation. Maybe you'll pay, $20 extra a month on this one. You may pay 30 a month extra on this one, 40 on this one. Don't do that, okay? Because you'll feel like you're just treading water. You're not making any progress. You need to start focusing on just one, right? So here's what you do. You pay the minimum on all of your other debts, and then whichever is your number one priority, that's the one that you're going to attack. So that's why we have to prioritize the order. Now, Katrina, as you know, there's two main approaches that people will say to how you should prioritize these things. So if there's any Dave Ramsey fans out there, he tends to say, pay off the smallest debt first, right? And he'll admit, mathematically, that's not smart, okay? Mathematically, it's smarter instead to pay off the highest interest rate debt first. As long as you're prioritizing something, I think there's room for grace there. But if you've got a credit card charging you 25% interest, you probably need to focus on that one instead of one that may be charging you 4%, even though it's a smaller balance. But just realize that there's two ways that you can go there. One thing Dave says is that if you're paying off the smallest balance first, you can get that one knocked out real quick, and it energizes you, right? It makes you feel better, and that motivates you to work then on the second one and the third one and the fourth one on your list. And you start to build this momentum. Now, me personally, the way I'm wired, I don't care. I just want the quickest, fastest, most efficient way out of debt. So that wouldn't speak to me. I just want to focus on the highest interest rate. But choose whichever way you want to go there. So that's how you prioritize. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pay a surplus. Whatever extra you have in a month, you just unload that on your number one problem, right? Pay the minimum on the rest. This is where a budget can be super helpful, which, a lot of people, the word budget is like a 4-letter word. A budget is important, guys. We need to have a budget. We need to control our spending. We're not going to talk to you about how to do a budget in this particular class, but there's tons of free resources out there that you can find and download and use. There's apps you can use on your phone to set up a good budget. But see, the importance of a budget is you're telling your money where to go before you even get it, right? You're controlling the cash flow. And if you have a budget, you're going to find out how much extra each month that you've got to be able to spend on that number one priority debt that you've got. So you've gathered your debts, you prioritize the order, and now you know how much extra money you've got each month, and you're just going to unload on that one debt until it's gone. And I would just say you have to learn to have this mentality that debt is the enemy. It's holding you back. You need to attack it. You need to kill it. You need to annihilate it, right? You've got to turn the corner, because what we're going to be talking about is money can work either for you or it can work against you. Right? Debt is working against you. It's holding you back. The interest is slowing you down. It's causing stress in your life. Money working for you, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But the idea is that you've got to go gather and prioritize them and pay a surplus. And notice that the last step, I say persevere and keep it up. That may seem overly obvious, but the reason I say that, here's what's going to happen. I know this because it happens to everybody. you're going to start making progress. You're going to get excited. You're going to be making some momentum. And then the car breaks down. The air goes out at the house. Whatever happens, right? And that's going to set you back again. And it's so easy to get just disheartened, right? And to give up altogether. So my challenge to you is don't give up. It will happen. Expect it to happen. But you've got to keep pushing. Don't give up. Keep moving, because again, it's so easy to get distracted, discouraged, and then just let it go. So gather all those debts up, prioritize the order that you're going to pay them off in, pay a surplus, pay more than as much as you can on that number one debt. And you might need to get creative. Here's the thing. You may look and you're like, I've got no surplus. Right. And if that's the case, you've got to make some big life decisions, right? You've got to find a way. I don't care if you're looking to sell some stuff to make room, make some big budget changes. I mean, life can continue without the most deluxe cell phone packages or TV packages or whatever, right? We may need to sacrifice some things. There may be some budget busters that are really holding you back, maybe going out to eat too often, things like that. But the key is find ways to get a surplus. And then just keep on going. Don't give up. Keep fighting. Keep pushing through. So if you want to get out of debt, there's other things we could cover, but with the limited time we got, those are the things I want you to focus on.
Yeah, Todd, I just want to reiterate how important that first step of gather is. I don't know how often I sit down and speak with people, and they have no idea how much they owe, who they owe, what interest rate they're paying. And it really boggles my mind that, and I'm teaching another class as well right now. And that's one of the things we're on right now is gathering all of your information, both your liabilities and your assets, creating a balance sheet or a net worth statement. It would be completely irrational, illogical, absurd to think of a company, say a company, not being able to, at a moment's notice, produce a balance sheet. A well-run household should be the same way. You should always have a good idea of what your liabilities are, what your assets are, and then your cash flow, where your money's going each month. So that's important, is to just know where your money's going each month.
So if you don't mind too, let me interject there, because as you're saying that, it reminds me, again, coming back to this family dynamic. And you want to have unity with your spouse on this kind of thing. And again, finances can be a division point for you. And here's what I've learned. In a marriage, typically one of you is going to be the bookkeeper, the other is not, right? Almost always there's just one person. And honestly, I think it should be that way sometimes, because one of you is probably more gifted in that. And with two people working the finances, working the books, it can actually mess things up a little bit. And that's okay. But what I would say is, if that's you, make sure you have, I call it financial date nights. I know that sounds super exciting, right? My wife and I will get together maybe every 6 months, or maybe just once a year, depending on how busy we are. But I'm the one who's handling the books and everything. No surprise, I'm a financial planner. But I have to make sure my wife is in tune, that she knows where everything's at and how things are going. And if you're not careful, it can cause division if you don't have communication on this. For example, I've seen where maybe the husband doesn't handle the books, and he sees the money coming in, but he doesn't see all the nickel and dime stuff going out each month from a budget. So he doesn't know why there's more left over at the end of the month. And guys, that can cause some pointing of the finger and bitterness and fights. So to get rid of that, have some open communication, have some financial date nights. So there's a little bonus tip. We didn't plan on that.
Right. So, kind of moving on to that, step 3, we say we've gotten to a good place with our debt. What's the next step? The next step would be to build up an emergency fund. This is the place where you've got cash available if the car breaks down, or your AC goes out, or the kid breaks a leg at the softball game. We all know these things happen. It seems like every month these things happen. So we might as well plan for them, to work them into our budget, into our plan. And the problem is there's a lot of people just use a credit card to take care of these issues when they arise. And then what are you doing? You're adding to your debt because you failed to plan for them. Going forward, make a plan to use cash for these types of needs.
Yep.
But what I get asked weekly is, well, so how much money should I have in that emergency fund?
Yeah, and you can get a lot of answers there from people. Here's a common rule of thumb most people will have heard, right? Is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So take what you typically spend in 1 month, multiply that by 3, multiply that by 6, and that gives you kind of the bookends of how much you might want to have in cash reserves. Now, realize that a rule of thumb is always going to have a point where it breaks down. That's not say that that's going to work for everybody. So some of the nuances to that, right? If you're an empty nester, you may not need as much. You got 6 kids at home, you're going to need a bigger position of cash, right? If you've got newer vehicles, maybe you don't need as much in cash because hopefully they won't break down as much. If you do have older vehicles with a lot of miles on it, then maybe you need to have more repairs, so you might want to have more cash. I'll speak to any of you that are self-employed. So that includes Katrina and I. And so what you learn when you have a business, when you're self-employed, your income can be volatile, right? So any of you may need to have extra in cash above and beyond what someone else might have. If your income's more stable, then maybe you don't need as much. But still, the 3 to 6 months of living expenses is a good guideline. Don't get paralyzed by this, okay? Some people, when they hear that, this seems insurmountable and frustrating. And so what I would say is just set a goal if you're hitting $1,000 if you haven't done that yet. Once you hit that, all right, set a goal for $3,000 and just move up the chain little by little. You're going to get there, right? As long as you don't give up. Plus, if you've done the other step, which is getting rid of debt, and you've got all those payments where they're gone and they're not haunting you anymore, you may actually be able to build up a cash reserves pretty quick. So, that's a little bit of guidance there.
Well, so where does this emergency fund need to be kept?
Not under the mattress, right?
Really?
Well, I have met people that have done that. I don't think it's
Mason
a great
jar
idea.
in the yard.
Yes, actually, I had a client once that did that, and the seals broke and the money was destroyed.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess in previous sessions, I think there was a bank that did some sessions and explaining some things, and I imagine they probably touched on this. So you set up a savings account of some sort. Obviously, a checking account for day-to-day expenses. Money market accounts can also be a good thing, but there's some place that's safe and accessible to you. Okay. Now, safe as in it's not. You don't want to put this money into, let's say, an investment account where the value may be fluctuating. This needs to be in a place that's going to be there for you because it's for emergencies when things happen. And then it needs to be accessible. So your 401k, your IRA is not a good place to put this money because you can't get to that money without a penalty. So it needs to be accessible to you. And
I, just jump in a little bit, and we will have to move kind of quick so we have time for Q&A, but you mentioned, the IRA and 401ks not being accessible. What I've seen people do is they skip this emergency fund step and they go right into maybe they've got debt paid off, but they don't have an emergency fund. And then they begin to put all their surplus into a retirement type vehicle, but they aren't yet 59 and a half, which is the magic number to be able to pull that money out without being penalized. And then that emergency arises and they're left in a bind to either go into debt or they pull from their retirement account and pay a 10% penalty. So you really don't want to skip this step.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And yes, Katrina did not misspeak. The IRS, in their infinite wisdom, decided at age 59 and a half is when you can start to touch your money in your IRA. Personally, I just found that comical because when you're 2 years old, you count half years. They're important to you. When you're 59, right. I have no idea who did that. Why not round it to 60? But that's a discussion for someone else. It's above my pay grade. So why don't we hit off into the final, which is my favorite, step 4. So we've talked about doing things in the right order, right? The progression, the planning pyramid. We've talked about getting out of debt and how important that is, then building up that emergency fund. So Katrina, where are we headed with step 4?
Right. So this is the part that gets Todd and I more excited because you're actually now able to start start making your money work for you. So you've got your debt paid off, you've got emergency in place, and now you can, if you do it right, you can get to a place of complete financial independence where your money is doing your work for you. And so in this step, we're talking about the investing for retirement, possibly saving for college, those longer term type of goals that you have, or just maybe just financial independence. And unfortunately, we can't go through an exhaustive class and the time here on investing, but we will just kind of touch on a few things here, some concepts with investing.
Yep. And first thing I think everybody needs to understand is that with investing, risk and return are very correlated. They go together. Okay. What do I mean by risk? When you invest money, there's always potential for what's called volatility, ups and downs. So any of you that are watching the news and they say, wow, the Dow did this, the Dow did that, it went up, it went down. When you invest into the stock market, for example, risk is ups and downs, and they tend to be temporary, right? It trends upward, but you're going to have some times that are pretty rough. So risk and return go together. So somebody could go real aggressive on their investments, go with like 100% stock portfolio. It's going to be a wild ride, buckle up. But historically, that's going to give you a good return on your money. Or you could go super conservative and you're not going to earn a whole lot. It's going to be a smoother ride, but you may not even keep up with inflation, right? So those go together from the beginning of time. People have been trying to find a way to separate the two, where you can have high return and no risk. It just doesn't work that way. In fact, if anybody comes to you with a product that they're trying to sell you and they say this is high return, low risk, don't trust them. Go get a second opinion, leave, run away, because that just does not exist. The way it works with investing, risk and return, they do go together. Now, like Katrina said, we could cover so many things on the topic of investments, but trying to connect with who I feel is probably on the other side of the camera here from me, I felt like there were probably just a couple things that we wanted to focus on. And the first thing is what's called the miracle of compound interest. I think most people are familiar with that phrase. And so to explain what that is, I'm going to show you an example on the screen here. Okay, I'm going to show you two different individuals. All right, so first we've got Sue here, and she's 25 years old. John is also 25 years old, and Sue's going to start saving $2,000 per year at age 25. She's only going to do that for 5 years, though, and then she's going to stop. So if she saved $2,000 a year for 5 years, how much money did she save? $10,000. Now, John did what a lot of us do. He procrastinated. So he's 25, but he's like, you know what? I'm just getting out of school. I'm just getting started. I don't have the ability to save. So he waits and puts it off. Maybe he overextended himself on debt because of instant gratification. He doesn't have the money. So he's going to wait until he's age 35, right? And then he's going to start. And most people would say, hey, 35 is still young. Now he's going to start saving $2,000 per month as well. And he's going to do that from Wow. Yeah. $2,000 per year from age 35 all the way to age 65. He's just going to keep on going all the way to retirement. So he actually saved a total of $62,000. Now, we have to assume that they're earning something on this. So let's just say they both went kind of aggressive, and we're just going to assume they earn 10% per year. Obviously, there's ups, there's downs. 10% is reasonable for a lot of situations, but we're just going to assume they earn 10% per year along the way. So the question is, how much money are they going to have? Remember, Sue saved $10,000, John saved $62,000. And what's shocking, as I get it pulled up here, Sue's going to end up with, in this scenario, $415,000. John only has $400,000. She only saved $10,000. He saved $62,000. Why such a staggering difference? Because she started young. She started early, right? And so for any of you out there that are young, especially, start now. All right. I say that, got to get out of debt, get your cash reserves built up, and then get into investing. But let that be a motivator, right? I'm going to find a way to get to that point. I'm going to find a way to start investing and saving for the future so that I can be financially independent, so that I can put kids through college one day, I can retire one day, that kind of thing. So that's the miracle of compound interest.
Right. I absolutely love it when I have a chance to meet with a young client that is motivated about saving, and I can crunch numbers for them, show them at just like $100 a month what that does over 40 plus years, and it always blows them away. And I do these scenarios where, well, what if you waited 10 years or whatever, and the question is always like, why, how does that happen? And it's because, like in this case, you're cutting off the when it would have had 30 to 40 years to grow, you're cutting that off. So yeah, that's compound interest over time. Time is one of your biggest assets in investing.
Yep. Now let me show you another thing, this thing I call lost opportunity cost, and hopefully this is visible enough on your screen, but let me explain what lost opportunity cost is, as the screen is animating for me here. Okay, hopefully it doesn't go too fast. And this is going to keep going. All right, just ignore the screen for a moment. All right, so let's just say that you've got a habit of every day running by Sonic or running by the gas station, picking up a soda, maybe buying a soda in a vending machine for $2, right? Now, if you wanted to, you could get like a giant case of sodas from Sam's and spend just 20 cents instead of $2. Let me go back. Right? Does that make sense? So if you're tracking with me each day, that's $1.80 that you're spending that you probably don't have to, right? Now, let's just assume you're going to take that $1.80 every day for 365 days a year, and you're going to do this for 35 years. You're going to take that $1.80 of savings and you're going to invest it. Right? Let's assume we're earning 10% per year on this thing again. And here's what I'm trying to show you. Little changes, because you may feel defeated already. Little changes in your habits can make a big difference in the end. So if you did this soda swap thing, right? And I just gave up my origin. I am from Wisconsin. We call them sodas up there. Not everything's a Coke. So hopefully nobody's offended with that. But you could have had $178,000 in your investment account after 35 years. Is that not staggering? Or I mentioned a budget buster that a lot of people face. So if you go out to lunch every day, maybe you're spending $8 on average every time you go out for lunch. Instead, you could bring your lunch to work with you and spend $3. That's $5 each time of savings. Let's say you eat out 255 times a year. If you would have taken that money and invested it, you could have $345,000 in your investment account after 35 years. Or if you got a coffee, you like your triple shot venti soy caramel java chip mocha vanilla latte, whatever thing, you're hitting up Starbucks or wherever, and it's $8 every time you go versus, all right, by the way, I don't recommend anybody cut out coffee. I am an addict and I've got to have it. I think if we cut out coffee, productivity would just tank. But maybe you just do a K-cup for 50 cents, right? So if you make that one change, right, and you take that $7.50 every time and you invest it, well, you'd have $740,000. Or what if you're just making a lot of interest payments? You're stuck in debt. You're paying a lot, blowing $150 a month in interest. If you get focused on getting out of debt, and then you can take that $150 a month and invest it instead, you could have $487,000 at the end of this time frame. So what I'm trying to get across here is these little habit changes, these little budget changes add up. That's going to be the thing that not only fuels you for being able to invest and become financially independent one day, have money working for you, it's also going to be the thing that helps you to get out of debt, to knock that stuff out. It's also going to be the thing that helps you to launch into having your cash reserves and your emergency fund in place. It's going to be the thing that after that launches you into investing, where you can make money work for you rather than against you. So again, we didn't get super detailed into what investing is. That's not our purpose for this particular level, but going back to the why. We all have things that we want to accomplish in life. We all have things that are important to us. And it's taking the time to step back and having some intentionality in our lives to accomplish these things, to set goals, to move forward, to get to that next step, to get to that next level, whatever that is for you, right? That's why we do these things. So if you'll, like we had to pick and choose what we wanted to talk about today with you. Do it in the right order. Get that debt knocked out, build up that emergency fund, and get some investments going, right? That's going to just completely change your life if you can do that. And I'll lead with the one other thing, which is when it comes to your paycheck, if you can find a way for every paycheck you ever receive to give a little, save a little, and spend a little, right? Give, save, spend in that order. It just works, right? So that's my encouragement to everybody out there watching this. And Fran's back on the screen, so I'm going to turn it over to...
I think we were going to get to some Q&A here.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I'm just making sure. I wanted to make sure that you saw those.
Yes, I have, and I was kind of perusing through them there. I think we kind of have answered a couple of them. The first one here, it says, this individual, their debt is their mortgage and student loans. How do they tackle the student loans? Do I invest while I have student loans? We kind of covered that. The big issue there is, what is the interest rate you're paying on those student loans? If it happens to be student loans with high interest rates, then you probably do need to prioritize those and get some of those paid off. But if you've maybe got zero interest on them, then I think it's safe to start, make some payments on it, but get an emergency fund and start planning for retirement. I believe we did answer the next question, best method to battle plan when reducing debt, the snowball method. And just to kind of put some numbers to what Todd was saying, say your surplus each month is $100. You've got an extra $100 to go towards debt. Pay minimum on everything except for what you've prioritized. What makes the most sense is the highest interest rate. Some tackle the smallest balance, but put that $100 towards that, and say the minimum payment on that bill was $50. So you're putting $150 towards it. Once that is paid off, then you would take that $150 and snowball it, roll it into the next priority debt to get paid off. Let's see what another question is here, and I might volley it off.
While you're looking, I will pull up. I've got another one pulled up here. This is an interesting question, and it's very deep. So,
I know which one you're talking about. I was like, oh gosh, that's deep. I'm not sure how to address that. I had some ideas, but hopefully
we can answer. I love that though. How would you advise people who may be coming from generational poverty? So a person that maybe is wired to maybe blame their circumstances more than themselves, like for their situation, and honestly, that mindset is what is so important. So I love the question. It's hard to answer, but if you, there's a quote, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, you are correct. And I don't remember who said that, but the idea is what you believe is what you become, right? If you believe that it's a system that you're stuck in and you can't escape it, that's what you're going to become. If you believe you can rise above it, it gives you that potential to rise above it. And so how do you get a person to see that is, honestly, that's a very tough question. I don't know that I have the perfect answer for that, but what I would say is there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door that was interesting to me, because here's what they found in their research. We also wrongly assume that wealthy people are generationally wealthy. Like it came from generation to generation, passed down to them. And what this study revealed is, no, most people are actually first generation wealthy. That means they didn't come from a lifestyle of riches. Instead, they worked hard, they stayed out of debt, they lived within their means, they got the second marshmallow, right? They didn't get it in instant gratification. And that's what they used to rise above it. So I don't know if that's the perfect answer, but what I would say is you really do have to kind of install a new mindset of thinking if you're in that situation.
And I'll just say as well, Todd, that I've met people on the entire gamut scale of income. People who are only bringing in $25,000 a year, and those who are bringing in $500,000 a year. And I've seen people in those low income live within their means, not have debt, find money to give, and be content. So and then a lot of it is that shift in your perspective and your thinking, but breaking that generational poverty, as the question said, it's hard. It's really hard to do.
I think something that to add some context to that as well. This was very convicting to me because a lot of times we say our problem is I don't have enough money, and that's why I'm not making progress. That's why I'm in debt. There was a website, I don't think it's up now. It was called globalrichlist.com. It was some kind of ministry website. And what they did is you could put in your annual income and it would show you where you rank, not with your neighbors, not with your peers, not with people you know and go to work with, go to church with, whatever. It compared you to a global standard, right? So we're bringing in third world countries, right? And I remember the numbers being like, if you made $10,000 last year, I believe you were in the top 20% of the world as far as wealth is concerned. And it just blew my mind because what I realized is, we've got it so good in this country. We're better off than what most people would say, right? None of us feel rich, but if you look globally, we're doing pretty good.
We get our needs and wants confused. There was another question about free budget apps. There's one that I stumbled across recently that I really like. It's called MoneyWise. If you just go to moneywise.com, they've got a website and they've got an app you can download. There's a free version, and then there's a version where you can pay a monthly fee, and it allows you to actually have all your bank, credit card, mortgage, all that imported in, and you can categorize all your expenses. And it uses, if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, it uses the envelope system for budgeting, but it's the electronic version. So that's one just right off the top of my head that I stumbled across recently. I don't know if you had one you wanted to throw out there, Todd, but MoneyWise is one I've used and played around with some myself.
Well, since spreadsheets are my love language, I use Microsoft Excel.
Same here.
No, I have seen a couple that I really like. One is called Envelopes, the letter M, Envelopes, and it's kind of like the envelope system but digitized. And then one's called YNAB, which, believe it or not, stands for You Need a Budget. Goofy name, but very solid.
Like a boy band.
Right, YNAB.
Right.
Another good one.
I think we've got about 4 minutes here. Somebody asks, how do you save with low risk? Mutual fund, ? Okay, mutual fund. We can't get into all this. That's a loaded question. There are mutual funds that are cash, and there is virtually no risk. And there are mutual funds that are very volatile and very high risk. That is something where you just need to call us, and we've got to talk to you to find out exactly what your objectives are and what your risk tolerance is. But yes, there are we unfortunately cannot separate risk and return. You didn't say, how do I get good returns with low risk? You didn't ask that question, but I have people all how can I get a good return with no risk? It doesn't, there's no such thing. But there are lower risk, lower volatile options that you would use for this individual says they're 33. You're still young. You've got if you're talking about retirement, why go super low risk? Anyway, we won't get into that. There's no reason why you can't take on a little bit more risk if you've got a long-term time perspective. That being said, if your risk tolerance is low, then it's absolutely okay to tone it down, but that's when you have to get in a conversation with a financial advisor that can talk to your specific needs and objectives and time frame there. Let's see.
I think
that kind of covers everything. There, wait, maybe something.
Oh, wait.
Okay, that's a question about a link for the next session or something.
And that is an excellent segue, Carl, for what I was about to say. But before I get to that, and I will answer that question, I do want to say a very warm welcome to Todd, or thank you to Todd and Katrina. You all covered, as your company implies, just a wealth of information, and you are one of the reasons I'm glad we're recording this, because there were a couple of slides that I'll want to go back and revisit and take a look out for inspiration. So thank you again for all the information you shared with us. And if real quickly, because I do want to just give some parting comments here, but I'm guessing you have a website or a phone number. If people have any questions, they do want to call you back directly. If you could give that.
It's StrongTowerWealth.com. And there's all of our contact information to be on there. There's Todd and I both, and our other advisors have their bios and links to their emails. So yeah, absolutely. You can find us on Facebook, Strong Tower Wealth. So yeah, we'd love to hear from whoever and help however we can.
Well, and to answer the question, so next week's session will be the final of the 4 weeks, and it is called, I think, and Todd made an allusion to it. It will be the Wilson Estate Planning Group is presenting Preparing for Life's Unexpected or Life's Changes. So it's really going to give us some tips on thinking through those unexpected things, those emergency funds like you talked about. If a parent suddenly has to move in with you and you're still trying to raise your own kids, the unexpected illness or death of a spouse or a loved one. So not great things we want to think about, but life things nonetheless.
Important things.
If you are interested in joining us next week, you will do the same thing you did to register for this one. You will go to the CAL's website and then you'll register, because that will mean a new link that is, unique to you. So,
and it looks like somebody's asking where the recordings are going to be posted.
The recordings, thank you. The recordings will be posted. I don't know that it will be ready tomorrow, but probably in the next day or two, this one will be. But the last 2 weeks are already up on the CAL's website. So, and I'm 99% sure that you would go to the CAL site, look for the financial literacy planning, and then there will be links to it. And it's also on the CAL's YouTube page that you can go and see all their different virtual events, but definitely, the ones that we've been offering. Then the last thing is also at the conclusion next week, we are keeping up with who's registering or really who's attending the sessions. And we are going to have like little grab and go bags that will be available, and they will be available through the library, and we'll get word to all of you who have registered and attended with directions and instructions like where you can pick up those bags. And they'll have information from our panelists from all 4 weeks, as well as a little budgeting book that's a gift from the library and from Treasurer Milligan. I'm just going to, I know if you need to go, you go, but I want to make sure I see a few more questions. Let me just make sure they're not something, oh, that was sweet. Okay, well, good. Jason said, I love this. Thank you. Great job. I just discovered this today. I'm going to watch all the videos. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you all. And thank you, Katrina and Todd, but thank you to our attendees. I mean, you are the reason we did this, and we love that you loved it. And we hope to see all of you back next Tuesday night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.